live stream the meeting. Oh, yeah. There we are. Hi, I'm Renee Hobbs, and welcome to Courageous Conversations. This is about Ripplers Are Courageous. Meeting. Oh,
Hi.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm here with Pam Stager and Yamaya Jean, and we're actually here in Washington, D.C., aren't we, Pam?
We are. We're attending some conferences about targeted violence and domestic terrorism. So we'll have a lot to share on the other end of this. We'd love it if you could, in the chat, say who you are and where you're calling in from tonight so that we know who's here. Seeing a lot of familiar names, and we can't wait to hear about your own experiences as well as our special guests this evening.
Sure. If you've been here before, you know that we're going to have a large group session for about 30 minutes. And then we're going to break into small groups for another 15 or 20 minutes. And we'll come back together for some synthesis. Everything that we're sharing tonight, you can find online at courageousri.com. And for those of you who are new, the big thing we're about here is learning and applying media literacy skills, finding common ground, and preventing violence and extremism. Now, seems like it was forever ago, Pam, but when we started this project, Courageous Conversations, which ran from March to July, we had a series of events on 10 different topics. We had over 1,000 participants, and we had people reporting that they learned a lot, and more importantly, that they were able to apply what they learned to real life.
That was the statistic we were most happy about.
That's exactly right. And then this fall, we had a professional development program for educators. We went on a courageous journey, exploring some of our courageous questions, like what is the difference between good conflict and high conflict? How are digital technologies influencing people's understanding of free speech, hate speech, and censorship? How is violent extremism affecting our society, and what can we do about it? And what do people need to know about social media economics and the profit motives that underpin conflict? And so some of the participants are here tonight, Pam, because they went on a courageous journey in the professional development program.
Yeah.
And then we get to the ripple effect. Pam, what's the ripple effect all about?
Well, the ripple effect was what we came up with as what we hoped some of the participants in our first two programs would do, especially in Courageous Conversations, would take some part of what they learned and share it with some audience they wanted to share it with. And we made a lot of resources available to them online. It's about bringing media literacy to the community as you define your community and as you examine the growing problem of violent extremism. So
we did think we were going to show some of the resources, right?
yes, we did. If we can go onto the website, that would be great.
Hold on here. Let me just share a different screen now. I'll share this screen, right? So from the home page, I went to Courageous Conversations. I think you guys see that.
And then down to Ripple Effect.
And then down to the Ripple Effect.
And there it shows you. Well, first, can you go to the curriculum?
Yeah.
For education.
Yeah, this gets you to the same place.
Yeah.
All the different topics.
All the topics and we put all of our resources in there. And at the top of that, you'll see that there were videos and of the key ideas. So what Renee and I did was truncate the information part to the key learning, and we created videos that you could just play the video. That's like 12 to 15 minutes in a session and then have your discussion. We also have a whole new curriculum on listening matters that talks about the importance of active listening. We have creative expression projects. Ben Thevenin, our youth media lead, created some wonderful projects that teachers can do with kids in school. We have curated educator resources. So there's for every single topic, there's a whole lot of additional information about where we got our information and what they can do with it. Some examples of lesson plans, etc. And that's across the complete curriculum. We talk about how media literacy can fit in pretty much anywhere in the school curriculum, K through 12 especially. And
you know, Pam, since we last met, a lot of our friends have not seen the portal, which is the listen in component. Basically, what we did was we created a way for you to hear and see what these conversations were all about. If you visit the portal, it's a really, it's a really fascinating, it's kind of a synthesis of a lot of the great conversations that happened in this space. But tonight's not really about the resources, right? Tonight's really about the courageous pioneers.
yeah.
Right? The folks in this space right now who decided to bring a courageous conversation in some creative way to their own communities. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, so tonight we're going to hear from courageous people who have taken leadership in implementing courageous conversations in their local or professional communities. In doing so, they're helping people activate the 4 key competencies that we try to underscore in courageous conversations and the professional development: media literacy, active listening, kindness and compassion, and community engagement. So our 4 ripplers that we're going to be highlighting this evening and hearing from are Trisha Driscoll. Krista Sarrazin is watching her daughter swim, so she wasn't able to make it tonight, but Trisha Driscoll is here from the Center for Mediation and Collaboration in Rhode Island. That's an online series that is underway as we speak from Rhode Island. Taylor Frome and Courtney Hawkins. Courtney wasn't able to make it tonight, but they're from the Mediation Center of Charlottesville, Virginia. They're doing theirs in person in Virginia. And again, that one is in progress. So they've already got a couple under their belt, and they've got a more in their series. Donna Alverman and George Boggs are both with us tonight, and they created a ripple that was specifically for music makers, songwriters, musicians, and people who appreciate music to talk about how music can contribute to this topic. And then Nancy Richmond and Barbara Holtzman from the UU congregation of the community of South County also held an in-person series of ripples in Rhode Island, and theirs is now complete. So I think let's start with Trisha Driscoll up at the top. Trisha, are you ready to tell us what it was that you guys were doing in your online conversations?
Sure, Pam. I'm ready. I'm ready to go. And I'm here in Rhode Island, not in DC. I'm sorry that you guys are in DC because it's much nicer here in Rhode Island. And happy to see a lot of our Rhode Island friends.
We did see
Also,
the sun once we got above the clouds in the plane.
Oh, that's nice. They said today it's been 9 days with no sun, but it's fine. Everything's fine. So we were so excited to be part of the Ripple Effect. And so here at the Center for Mediation and Collaboration in Rhode Island, we do a lot of work around active listening and how can we help navigate through this very chaotic and conflicted world? So what we decided to do is to take all of the good work that you folks have done and simply replicate it. So we've held 2 sessions so far. We chose to start with the high conflict topic because that seemed to be really engaging, and it certainly was. We had, let's see, think we had 9 people on the first call and a few less than that on the second call. I have to look sort of specifically. It was, from our perspective, it was incredibly successful. We reached out to people who are kind of outside of our normal community. People were very engaged. The format of having the large group and then the small groups facilitated was excellent. It provided opportunities for really great discussion. And frankly, for us, also provided opportunities for some of our volunteers to sharpen their facilitation skills, which was really great for us as well. We, again, everything that this project is trying to do around active listening, kindness, community engagement, those are things that are very closely aligned with the work that we do. So we were really, really grateful to be participating. Our plan is we've got scheduled out, I think, 5 more events, following, again, the same process that we did for the original Courageous Conversations. And we're looking forward to seeing where that goes. So we're just super excited.
And we're super excited about your continuing, because you've also allowed us to open it up to other people other than your mediators to join, since it's online. That's great. Thank you so much, Tricia. I think we'll go to Nancy and Barbara now, if they would be willing to tell us about, and I just want to let everybody know that you'll be able to ask questions to all of these people further when we go into our breakout room. So they're just giving a quick and dirty overview right now.
All right, thanks. I'm going to start. I'm Nancy Richmond, and Barbara and I are from the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of South County. During the fall, we facilitated 3 in-person sessions. The topics of why media literacy matters, preventing violent extremism, and falling down the rabbit hole. We felt the first one was really a perfect introduction, and preventing violent extremism was a topic that we thought people could relate to. And then falling down the rabbit hole hits you, in your heart, right where you live, in terms of people in your life who have already gone down that path. It was held at the UU, in the UU sanctuary. And we had an attendance ranging from 11 to 21 in the last session. And we think that part of what contributed to the success in terms of the attendance was that we really did a lot of marketing to social justice organizations, other congregations, certainly UU. It was announced from the pulpit in several conversations and newsletters. And a really cool thing that happened is there's a group locally called the Huddle, which is a legislative social justice action group. They typically had a meeting that would have conflicted with one of our meetings. And instead, they decided to have a field trip to our session. So we had about 15 of that group that attended our session, which is really a great synergy between the 2 groups. We did a customized and pretty thorough annotated resource list. So that went quite a bit further than the resource list online, but certainly we took from that and then added many of our own resources as well, that we had a link and a paragraph to, which I think people appreciated. And then we felt, and the group felt, that the breakout sessions went well. For the first 2 sessions, where we had about a dozen people, we kept the whole group together for the discussion. I mean, a lot of people knew each other, and people really didn't want to break into 2 groups. And then the last group, because we had 20-some people, we did split that into 2 groups. Barbara, to you.
Okay. And we felt that the people were really engaged and shared some important observations and learnings. So I'm going to give you some examples. One person said the awareness that confirmation bias made it difficult to even consider using critical analysis. Mm-hmm. Someone else said that the awareness that if one continues to stay curious, that their first reaction sometimes gets changed. Another is the realization that pushing to change someone's mind evokes resistance, but that it can possibly happen if there is compassion and kindness. And I found this one really funny. It's hard to be curious when I'm being judgmental. So I have to work on that. But it's hard to put it into practice. I'm realizing how much I get triggered. We can all relate to that one. there were a few people who were so invested in their stories, particularly falling down the rabbit hole, that they dominated their groups. So we had to manage them to keep them from taking over and practice being curious and not furious. Personally, I'm really glad I did the Ripple. And it's not just because I really value these teachings, and I do, but it was also helpful to me personally because they say when you want to learn something, you need to teach it. And I learned the practices much better by teaching it than even by taking the 10 programs, that you did. One disappointment that I want to share is that few people use the media literacy cards to practice between sessions. But those questions are so important to making us think more critically. And I've wondered what else we might have done to really facilitate, to encourage people to use them. And I'm curious about other groups' experience with that. Okay, that's us.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. So I think we'll go to the other dynamic duo that's here tonight. Donna Alberman and George Boggs. We're going to tell you about their very unique and interesting Ripple.
Thank you for having us. This is exciting to see the other people out there rippling and hearing about them. We actually have 3 people here, George and I, and Latasha Price, who has not, there she is. She was a participant, or is a participant. We're in the 3rd Ripple, 4th one coming up February 19th. And because we thought that we needed somebody that was also a participant and not just George and me, with how great we thought something went or how terrible something went. So Latasha's here to always to keep us honest in terms of what she thought and she heard. So I'll just make my, so we're going to do our 3 minutes in 3 parts, about a minute each. The interesting thing is I'm going to start with Ripple 3 because that's the most recent and it's most on my mind, in as much as it did show how somebody else has already said you can say curious, but not furious if you try to use some of the CCRIs. And we did that with 4 of them. The one that I'm going to talk about tonight is the one on the propaganda. And so targets of propaganda. And as a consequence of that, what we found out and what we learned was structurally, each of us, when we would be part of it or planning, when George and I planning it or whatever, we found that there was a process and a product. The process was trying to get the ideas from Courageous Conversations somehow into a different modality, music. Okay, now they do have words, etc., but there's a lot in terms of songwriting that depends upon the music and writing it. And so we had musicians there represented and also people who just wanted to be appreciators. And so that was really the second part that we learned was then the product, which was the most exciting because then we could see sometimes what we thought was going to work and sometimes it didn't work so well. And sometimes for different people, it worked for different reasons. So we learned, like you do when you're teaching, not to depend on everything to turn out just like you planned it, right? And we had fun. Who's next?
George and then Latasha, right?
Sure. I when the opportunity came for me to participate in the Courageous Conversations, my mind went immediately to country music and the contested space that had sort of erupted in country music at the time. And I pitched it to Donna and participated in these initial groups. And I was just fascinated with the idea of bringing people who were very much invested in that industry for their livelihoods and their identities, who are on a day-to-day, weekly basis interacting with audiences and having those kind of contested experiences where they're saying, this is the perspective of someone who doesn't think this is such a good idea, and an audience member who has been clapping and yucking it up and having a great time, all of a sudden turning to their partner and saying, babe, it's time to go. And so I was fascinated by the way that cancel culture had kind of crept into country music, and the way musicians and then people who love music we're making sense of that contested space. What does it mean to encounter a different way of seeing the world in song? That kind of basic question for me has come up through all these three ripples, whether we talked about, propaganda or some of the other topics. It's what does it mean? What does it mean to engage in that conflict possible space in a way that is authentic, in a way that is not sort of like losing the battle before it's begun, by sort of turning yourself into a propagandist. But how do we make it new? And then as audience members, how do we participate? What happens in our own emotional space as we enter into that special zone of music? I think as a scholar, one of my complaints about media literacy has been assumptions about logical, reasoning as a source of decision making. And so I've really loved the way our ripples have dug into the emotional work that happens in music. And I think it's been so neat to see that integrated in media literacy discussion. Latasha?
Okay, there we go. I found our ripples to be so engaging, and I, align with a lot of hip hop music and hip hop dance. And so I knew our participants liked a lot of country music, a lot of folk music. And so I wondered how we would, find alignment, or, how we would just kind of, work together. But we had a lot of the same participants over the, over the ripples. And it's like we, for me, developed our own sense of community. And I was initially frustrated with the mantra of be curious, not furious, because, I've got a lot to be furious about, I felt. And so when it would come up and I was furious about something, this space allowed the time for just thinking about it more. And as the other lady said, it's like, okay, wait a minute. It made me rethink, think more deeply about some of the initial things that I felt about something. It just kind of made me add different perspectives and textures to it. Whereas I would have initially just kind of dismissed it right away and, gone about my day. So that was a really cool part of it. And I was a part of the original Ripple as well. I mean, the original Courageous Conversation. And I really like that we focused on music, because still as artists, there's a commonality as well. And so it just ended up being a really nurturing and eye-opening experience.
Fantastic. Thank you. That was a wonderful triad of experiences there. So our last presenter is Taylor Frome, who's going to be presenting about what she's doing down at the Mediation Center in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Hi, everybody. I'm sorry that Courtney can't be here because she has such a different perspective on all of this. I'm new to the Mediation Center. I just started at the end of August. And so part of what I'm working on as the executive director is building up our role in the community beyond mainly mediating court-referred cases, which is what we mainly did when I came in. And so and I was part of the series that Renee and Pam did last winter. So I had a lot of excitement about this particular process. And Charlottesville, in some ways, is a really important place to do this work. And so in the fall, I reached out to a woman at the UVA campus police who is their diversity officer. And she had done a one afternoon training called Heart that was about hate crimes. And so I reached out to her to see what she was doing and ended up, she's partnering with me. That's Courtney Hawkins. And I think that we see what we're doing, that right now we're doing a 6-part series, but I think it's just the beginning of probably some campus related activities. I'm a little disappointed because the timing is such that students are just getting back from break now, and we're like on our 3rd session. And so my vision was to have a bunch of UVA students and people that are interning with her. But I've got the support of the UVA Campus Police, which is really interesting. And Courtney and I mean, she's 32 years old and she's from Birmingham, Alabama, and did like nonviolent peace work in Birmingham. So she's got a background that's very, very different than mine. And we really have fun together. But we also have very, very different styles. So we're doing 6 workshops, one a week, and we're doing them in the evening, which I think is probably for the population we targeted, not the best thing, especially not in the winter. So they're 5:30 to 7:30 in person. And I think if I was doing it again, I would do them. A lot of our participants are seniors, and a lot of people have said to me, I don't drive at night in the, and especially with all the backcountry roads where we are, people, don't want to hit deer and drive off the road and all that, so, we're learning a lot in this process. We're doing it at a place that's called the Center, which is really it's like a huge senior center. And we had over 20 people enroll, but we had 10 people participate the first time, 7 last time. Who knows tomorrow's the next workshop, so we'll see who we get. And we did preventing violent extremism first and high conflict second. And Pam had shared with me a video where Sarah Silverman is interviewing Christian Piccolino, who was a right-wing extremist leader, talking about hate crimes and talking about his changes. But they also had footage of the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville. And it turned out that I had three people out of 10 were there during that. And one of them was serving as a campus police officer during that. And that was part of why I wanted to do this, is I know that Charlottesville has this somewhat festering trauma that we need to find ways to get at and to bring people together on. And that just became very clear to me in listening, especially to the police officer talk about what that was like and the powerlessness and anger that she felt during it. So I feel like this is really just like, this 6-part series is just kind of step 1 in building relationships and opening doors and starting dialogue. The second workshop we did was on high conflict, and Courtney had this idea to use 12 Angry Men as a conflict presentation, as a conversation starter rather than one of the materials that you had. And we ended up with two scenes, a script for 2 scenes from 12 Angry Men. And we only had 7 people, so we read it. We just took turns reading. We read a play as part of our series. And I think people really had fun with it. And it made me realize, like, especially with this topic, and especially in the community that I'm in, the more fun we can have with it, the better. Just as a way to free people's thinking. But what was really funny is, so we did this scenes from 12 Angry Men, and Courtney had chosen it. And so she talked about the high conflict. And I was like, this was an example of good conflict, not high conflict, because I don't know if people are familiar with the movie and the play, but, these jurors all are, 11 of them are on one side and one person is holding out, and there's a lot of anger and a lot of, just a whole lot of anger. But by the end, everybody has changed their mind to align with the one. And so I kind of want to pick it apart again and think about that as a, it's an, you know, it was made in the 50s. The movie was made in the 50s, but the story of 12 people, all of whom have very, very strong opinions. Well, most everybody has a strong opinion, and how the one person who questions that opinion is able to bring everybody around is really an amazing story. So going back in tomorrow, I'm excited about just the conversations that are happening, and mainly excited about this as the start of something with the people that are with, partly with the center and partly with Courtney and the campus police, because half the population of Charlottesville is the university. So we're talking about a very, very the largest group I could possibly have engaged with. And it's also where the Unite the Right rally was. It was on that campus. And so I don't know what's next, but I feel like it's been a really good step.
Wow.
Thank
you so
you,
much
thank
for
you,
sharing.
thank you. Wow, and you guys are good. We've planned this to end at 7:30 and it's 7:31. Wow.
Uh-huh.
So here's what we have planned next. You can feel it already, can't you? You can feel how what we're exploring is what's possible and what happens when you try to create community through creativity, through critical thinking, through bringing people together for dialogue and discussion across differences. What we'd like to do now is break into two groups for an open discussion, but we do want you to reflect a little bit on new questions that arise for you as a result of hearing all of these different ripples. We want you to reflect on what's possible moving forward now that you've heard these kind of ripples. We want you to hear, but we want you to think about, well, like what can go wrong? And we want you to bring up those issues. So we're going to let it all hang out right now. But the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to review, like we always do, our
Guidelines.
discussion guidelines.
Yeah, because one of the things that we always stressed in Courageous Conversations is that in order to have a courageous conversation, you also have to have some guidelines to make sure that we are all respecting each other. So our guidelines were simple: speak for yourself and out of your own experiences, allow others to speak for themselves, share the time, allow others to finish speaking and take turns, stay curious, ask honest questions, pause, take time for reflection, and leave room for silence. It's an okay thing. People are thinking, and sometimes the thinkers come out after a period of silence. Practice active listening. Listen generously. Assume good intentions while also recognizing that your words have an impact. And try to stay engaged. When possible, close any unnecessary programs, applications, and notifications. Put your phone on silent and try to minimize the distractions that we all have in our lives.
Nice,
Dogs and
nice.
cats and kids can come in, but that's
you can talk about whatever you want, but of course we're really intrigued about reflecting on your successes, thinking about the challenges that you have experienced, and thinking about the possibilities for the future. So here come the rooms. We're going to take about 20 minutes for this. So have a great conversation, and we'll see you back. Well, oh, hold on. I've got to open up the breakout rooms, don't I? Here we go. The rooms are open now. You'll see a link there. Just click the link, go into your small group conversation. We'll see you back in about 20 minutes. Okay, we're back and we only have a few minutes now. I hope you had a meaningful discussion. We in our room, we certainly did. But now's our chance to do a little synthesis. So we're going to try to do some reflection on like, what are the implications of being a courageous Rippler? For you Ripplers, we want to know, what'd you learn about yourself? For you folks who are here tonight because you're thinking about rippling or wondering about rippling, what can you imagine for the future? The floor is open. We'll hear from about 3 of you. Who wants to go first? Donna, turn your microphone on.
Unmute where the microphone is down the bottom, where it says mute. Just get rid of that. Click on it and get rid of that red line.
It's not working. We can't
Yeah.
hear you. Oh, don't you hate that? Oh, wait, hold on.
Unmute the whole group.
Yeah.
I pushed unmute. Can you
There
hear
you
me?
go. There you go. We hear you now.
Okay. All right. I would just say one short thing. I think that I would say, if you're thinking about doing it, try it. It feels like it's a creative opportunity and you are doing some good for something that you believe in and also something you can learn from.
It really opened up my thinking to look at how we can use emotion to understand the needs of the participants while creating a sense of belonging at the same time.
Yeah,
I
I
think
love
something, sorry.
Go ahead, Taylor.
I was going to say, I think something that's been helpful to me is not thinking about it as a finished product. Because there's every time, I mean, so far it's like, oh, well, what about this? And it's really just it's just stepping into this conversation.
Yeah, following up on Bob's comment about belonging, I loved the stories in our group about how there was a real sense of community that was built in the group, and that the participants didn't want to go into breakout rooms. They wanted to stay together and hear each other's stories. And I love that. That's great.
Could I just say one compliment to George and Natasha? I think it's Natasha. Is that the music actually is such a brilliant idea because you're so used to listening better when you're listening to music. And when you're creating music, it's there for people to listen to. So it's a medium that people are actually used to communicating in respectful ways, even if the topics are tough. So that was just brilliant.
Yeah.
And that was Donna's thinking, I believe. And then she started bringing in the musicians. I think there's also something to be said for a number of people that are enough for everybody to share and everybody to be listened to as well.
I was just going to add that I think the sharing tonight speaks to the range of opportunities that you have. I mean, some of us did a pretty traditional replication of the Courageous Conversations and the topics and really focused on media literacy as such. Mm-hmm. And then the music group took it much further and focused differently. And so, people who want to ripple really can be very creative in how they do it.
Yeah, it takes courage, but it is a generative process. It's like you never step in the same river twice, right? Every time you do it, it's going to be different, but we're really excited that you guys are doing it. And we're going to be showcasing Ripplers from all walks of life every month now. So I hope you come back for another session, because we've got the teachers who are rippling, right? We've got rippling happening with little kids and older kids, and we hope that you will continue to share with us what your experiences are as we learn from each other. So listen, I just wanted to make one announcement, really, one or two announcements, right, Pam? We want to talk. Oh, and can you share? I think you can see my screen now, right? I don't know if you can hear my screen, but we hope, can you hear that?
Yeah, a little bit.
So we hope that you tell people about the Student Media Contest, which is open now. We're going to be giving away prizes to students aged 12 to 25 who take on a courageous conversation. And we've got a great list of events coming up. We hope you join us for the discussion of the book Homegrown. The subtitle of that book is Timothy McVeigh and the Rise of White Right-Wing Extremism. This is a fascinating book. And then we've got all of the ripples that you've told us about up there. So the Center for Mediation in Rhode Island's doing some online events, and you can register for them at the events page. So listen, thank you so much for coming out tonight to participate in this. And I think we should give all the Ripplers a big round of applause. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thanks for joining.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
See you again.